Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. Yes, it's spring training. Yes, it's the NFL offseason. And yes, we got lots of things to do. We're going to get out on a crab cake tour. The Maryland Crab Cake Tour, presented by the Maryland Lottery, will resume on March the 6th at Fadley's. I might have some Monopoly scratch off. This isn't a real one, but I'll have real ones by then. And we do appreciate all of our sponsors coming along, Jiffy Lube and a whole bunch of others, Wise Markets, Royal Farms, for getting us into March. And, once I get into football season, I do football and then I had politics and then this felon is running the country. So I do politics when I can and whatever. And I've gotten off the beaten path the last couple of weeks where I have a bunch of people who've reached to me, new books, new projects, different things, old guests, returning guests, different ways that I want to get onto the program. Lawrence Lanahan's one of those guys. He's a local author. He joined us on a much serious issue, The Lines Between Us, a book a few years ago about racism, the city, politics, all sorts of things like that. This isn't going to be nearly that heavy, although I will fight you about music and about songwriting and about all of this stuff. So first things first, and I'll welcome you back on. You're one of the many who just reached to me and say, "Hey, dude, I did a thing, man." I'm like, "Hey, dude, come on the show. What's going on?" So when it has to do with music, I had 2 weeks ago, I had Grammy award-winning percussionist MB Gordy on the program because his sister is a listener of mine. So anytime I can do music around here, I'm trying to chase down Geddy Lee. Rick Emmett from Triumph is coming on next week. So you knew this was my lane, right, Lawrence?
Yeah. Get Getty. He's got an autobiography, doesn't he?
Well, that was last year. This year, he's doing the baseball history.
Oh, no kidding.
He's doing a whole baseball thing because he's the world's biggest collector of memorabilia. Like he has the most Negro Baseball League autograph things. He has the most president baseball signed in the world. Yeah,
I
Getty's a
had
serious
no
cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Well,
multi-talented guy.
Getty is a
You ever
new
seen Rush?
world man, is what he is. Come
You ever
on.
see Rush live?
Only probably 100 times. Yes, I'm that guy.
I
I'm
was
that
like his
guy.
foot synthesizer.
Well,
Not enough to be playing all that bass, but he's got his feet going too.
here you go. Here's where you nerds get going. And I told this story to one of my musician buddies last week. I went to see the Black Crows with Gina Shock down at MG whatever National Harbor,
The
and we're
Civic
just like
Center.
we're
Oh no, okay.
pals, like we're so we went down Christmas time, and I'm with a rock and roll Hall of Famer, right? And she's very innocuous. Nobody recognizes her. She's short. She's blonde. She's beautiful. She's a rock and roll Hall of Famer. She's my Dundalk girl. And I get to a show with her concert, and we got front row tickets, and it wasn't anything about her or me. I just clicked online and bought them. They just dropped, and I'm like, let's buy them, let's go. We jumped in the car. And the first thing she did when we got down there in the front row is she's all nerding out on the kits and like the tech and all that.
She's from the
Rush was
Go-Go's, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Rush was the original band that when I was a kid and I was not a musician, I was a wannabe. I was a baseball. Yeah, I played sports, but I had a bass and I wanted to learn how to play it. I never did to this day, right? Like learning Spanish, I didn't learn it, but they were the original band that Getty would write liner notes about all of his equipment, every synthesizer he discovered, and he was early into the proggy side of exploratory. And Neil Peart would write tunes about all of the the percussionist things he had. So this is right in your range of music, right? You've
Oh, it's that is
recently
a gift to us heads, isn't it? When they put all the technical details in the liner notes.
Well, what is your like? I know of you as like a political author. Like, where do you get off doing all this music stuff, Lawrence?
I always have, man. When I first got into journalism, I was an education researcher for 7 years in my 20s. I kind of broke into journalism, and the first stuff I did was all half, I would say half music. Wrote a 5,000 word profile on this guy who was an artist from New Orleans, and his thing was sketching musicians live. He'd sketch jazz musicians. He'd improvise the sketch while they improvised music.
Sort of
He
that
was,
Louis
but
Armstrong kind of thing, that
well, yeah, he
image you
was
just
buddy.
see.
Those famous families in New Orleans, the music families. He was good buddies with James Andrews and I think his nephew Trombone Shorty. So Katrina flushed them out,
Oh.
and they came to New York. And I was living in New York. It's like, wow, is New Orleans going to regrow in New York? And there was one bar in Alphabet City where all the musicians from New Orleans kind of started hanging out at. And so they would push all the chairs and tables to the back because in New Orleans you dance to the music. And Kurt was there. And I thought, man, I'll write a profile of James Andrews, this famous New Orleans musician, gets flushed out to New York. But this guy, Kurt, was so passionate about music and art. I ended up profiling him. I did a profile of this young gospel band. Playing their first gig at the gospel tent at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. Like it is a big deal to play the gospel tent if you're a gospel group. So I kind of followed their first thing. You know, like this music, I've been playing guitar since I was 14. I've always been into music. My sisters are 10 and 12 years older than me. So I was, my friends were listening to Wham and New Kids on the Block. And I was like getting cassette tapes and dubbing my sister's Crack the Sky LPs, right?
Oh, I just saw
Oh,
Crack the
I knew
Sky
that was going
tonight.
to get you.
Come on
What?
now.
You saw Crack the Sky when?
You come on, you're making this up. They played Saturday night. I was
No,
like,
where?
they played in the basement at the Falston Barrel House on Saturday night. Palumbo's coming on the
Was
show this
Palumbo there?
Palumbo's coming on the show this week. Yes.
Oh, wow.
No.
Yeah.
I can't believe you just you
Oh, I have
randoed
a
that.
you
I
know that
dude, I
that
dropped.
Crack the Sky shirt, the black one with the
Yeah.
I every time I wear that, people come up to me, "Oh man, I did sound for them in the 70s." Like everybody, I wore that shirt to a music festival in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was a 4-night music festival and 3 or 4 people were like, "Crack the Sky." So it's not just a Maryland thing. They're
So my
huge.
wife didn't know about them, like full on. And last Wednesday, Brian from the band threw me a note, and it was the sweetest thing. Like, I mean, nobody invites me to do stuff. Like, honestly, I'm not crying the blues, but like, it was kind of an out of the, hey, the band wants to invite you to the show. It's the 50th anniversary, and I'm like, I wrote about them in the '80s. I was the music critic at the Sun from '86 to '92.
Okay.
How old are you? That always defines. You said something about Wham. How old are you?
I turned 50 on
Okay, so you're
Friday.
6 years younger than me. Okay. So, I mean, we're at a different point into the '80s with MTV and music and British rock and the Sex Pistols and Poison and like all of that. But I'm a classic rock nerd. I collect the 1970s Pacifica belt buckles. They're kind of my nerddom of that classic rock Kansas Sticks Zeppelin kind of era.
Yeah.
And I saw the Zeppelin movie 2 weeks ago. Finally
The
got me out.
doc?
Yeah, finally
I
got
haven't
out to a
seen it.
movie theater. It was It was so good, and it was
Was the
so
sound good?
restored. I was just everything was good about it. It was just great. I mean, it was just great. So, but Crack the Sky, they invited us out Saturday night. We went up to Falls. It was cold. It was packed, and we went in, and it was a timepiece, dude. Like my wife doesn't know the music, and everybody in the room knew the music. Don't tell your mother I'm here. Don't tell your mother I'm here
I saw them
tonight.
at the
You know,
Rams
so
Head Live in Annapolis, and I mean, Crack the Sky fans are fans, man. And so there's this guy sitting at the table next to me, and they're like, "We're gonna play a song from our 2008 album, right? Not a song everybody's gonna know." And the guy next to me is just singing along to
I
every
sang
word.
every word from the greenhouse. I'm blowing up Detroit. Like I'm into it. And my wife's like really getting off on how much fun I'm having. And then the band came, well, we're all the way in the back, brought us up to the front. And now we're like in the, I got a bad back. So I had to sit in it. And I didn't want to sit. They gave me a seat so good that I had to like, all right, I got to
Yeah.
sit here now, like, but we were 5 feet from John. He was almost spitting on us by the time they were doing the end and ice. And she's a dancer. Yeah,
But
so
at heart, he's a Beatles guy. You know what I mean?
no
Like
doubt, but it's
that is
very
like,
proggy. Like
oh
when my
yeah,
wife and I said to her, she's like Pink Floyd, dude. Like she was hearing Genesis, she was hearing Yes, and then all of a sudden she hears like which she loves Hot Razors, and that's very '80s
that is a perfect
rock.
song.
It's a yeah, Lawrence Lanahan, he's done a book on music. It's called Rearranged. He is asked to be on the show, which I would flippantly say invited himself on. But I love great guests. I love when people do great things and they have a passion for what they're doing. Give me so you love music, you love Crack the Sky. I even text John Allen, my dear rock star buddy. I said you had a Crack the Sky shirt in '81, and I remembered it was black with a white jersey, almost like this is right. And he's like, I don't remember that. I'm like, I remember you had a Crack the Sky shirt. So you always remember. I never had
I
one, but I
should have
did over
worn
my
it. I
music.
should have worn it. I'm wearing my shirt I just got back from Austin, and I'm wearing my Sam's Town Point shirt. Had some amazing musical experiences
I
in
had a
Austin last
great
week.
Austin experience last year. I went to see Springsteen and I went up at a corner bar and I saw one of the greatest bands I've ever seen in my life. And I have video. I was 2 in the morning streaming back to my wife, like, you won't believe that. And I got to go back and the barbecue and
Oh,
all that. But so give
oh,
me the deal. You're a music dude. I know you live here, right? You
Yeah,
live in
yeah.
Baltimore,
I'm
right?
right here in Hamilton, Northeast Baltimore.
So give me the the exits from New York to here and how you wind up doing this really interesting. And it's not about any specific music, right? It's about music, your book.
It's about the joy of listening to music by listening to the arrangement. So it's a podcast, so you'll get to hear lots of cool stuff. And so
I'm
I
sorry, I
just
keep saying book. I think of you as an author. I'm an idiot. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
that's an okay mistake
Don't
to
buy
make.
the book. Listen to the podcast. Is that good?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I just, I mean, music has just been, other than my family and my friends, that's why I live for a long time. And, I've played in bands. I studied, Carl Filipiak, the jazz guitarist.
Sure.
I took lessons from him in my 20s. I would come out of, he lived right up here on Chesley and Hamilton. I would drive 2 rush hours. I lived in Cabin John in DC. I would do 2 rush hours to get up here by 7. If I was too early, I'd go to Kelly's pool hall for a while. And if I was on time, I'd go right to Carl's house. I would do lessons. I'd be pumping my fist when I came out of his house. He loved music so much and was so good at teaching it. So I learned jazz theory. And then for my birthday in my 30s, my wife had heard me talking about, oh, I want to learn how to compose. I want to do composition lessons. She got me lessons at the Peabody with this incredible composer and teacher, Judah Adachi. And so I learned a bit about composition and started writing like string parts for my songs, horn parts, that kind of thing. And so the at the heart of this podcast is, what is a song really? Right? Because you and I, we love songs. We got our favorite bands.
I could
We
never
got our
write
favorite
one. I
songs.
think about it all the time.
Yes, you could.
Like writing songs. Like my friend Johnny Allen is one of my best friends in the world. John and I are we've just grown close. We've known each other since we were 10 years old. And it's just all these years in. And I always marvel at it because he was a drummer, became a singer, a songwriter, and he's written hits and like all that kind of stuff. And Mitch Allen and that group that wrote songs. The other night, I'll give you something that's an interesting thing. My wife, this is about songwriting, right?
Yeah.
I went to pee at the Crack the Sky show, and I'm
Yeah.
literally in the bathroom, and I'm hearing Palumbo start to tell a story, and I'm like, he wrote the Kicks hit. He wrote "Don't Close Your Eyes."
He did?
He did. And I'm an old music critic, and I interviewed them both 30 years ago. I know them, whatever. I don't know the story of that. I don't even want to know because Palumbo's coming on this week. And I'm going to say, how did you and Steve Whiteman get like, he sang it the other night, and I pretty sure everybody in the room knew it. My wife knew the song because
Yeah.
she grew
The
up in
Venn
New Hampshire.
diagram of Crack the Sky
Yeah,
and
my what in
Kicks is pretty
Maryland
tight.
and right? I mean, in
Yeah.
Hagerstown and Pittsburgh and whatever, Witkowski and like all that. And I'm thinking to myself, they wrote that song 40 years ago. It was a hit single, and it's out of Palumbo's range. So it was very awkward. I mean, I didn't even put it up because I'm like, people might, but I can appreciate Tom Waits writing a song and not being able to sing it nearly as well as the Eagles did.
I'll tell you, Nestor, if you can tell a story, which you're very good at, you can write a song. And
No, I
the
could never
first
write
line
a
of your
song.
song is, "I was peeing at the Crack the Sky show."
No, 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 no,
I think
no,
you could do it.
no. I
Yeah,
don't think
but
I'm capable.
I think you could. But anyway, so all right, think about it this way. All right, somebody you realize, oh, I didn't know that person wrote that song, right? Did you watch the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary thing?
Pieces, yes.
Did
I
you
did
see
see, I
Miley
saw the,
Cyrus and Brittany Howard do "Nothing Compares to You"?
I did not.
Okay, so it's the two of them. Do you know who wrote that song? You know Sinead
Prince
O'Connor.
wrote that song, of course.
Prince wrote
Well,
that
I'm a
song.
music guy, so yeah.
Yeah, okay. The way that Sinead O'Connor did that song and arranged it, isn't it kind of her song too?
Yeah.
Okay, so Brittany Howard
Well,
and
they would say
Miley
taking a
Cyrus.
song and making it your own, right?
Right, right. So
Like,
Miley Cyrus and Brittany Howard get up there, and the band's kind of in the shadows, but there's a lot of guitars up there, and there's this one guitar like every 4 measures, and it's like, oh, this song sounds different. It's been rearranged. It's been made very guitar centric. And what happens? They're doing a duet. They're going back and forth, singing back and forth. And Brittany steps up. She's got this blonde Telecaster. Looks an awful lot like, one, the guitar that G.E. Smith played later. Two, it looks a lot like Prince's guitar. All right. So she comes forward and just slays this guitar solo. Um, Sinead O'Connor, I don't think, had a guitar solo in her song, right? So by rearranging a song, you you can make it your own. Arrangements, covers are technically called derivative music. It derives from someone else's creation, right? That's sort of a pejorative term. Oh, it's derivative. That music's derivative. It's not to me.
Well,
I
that's
f
where the Zeppelin movie came in. Everything they did was, Muddy Waters, Delta
Ask Waddy
Blues,
Dick Willie Dixon.
literally, right? And where it
Yeah.
came from.
Well, that's the
And
thing. When people start arranging, when these conventions of arranging start emerging, oh, we're going to do it this way, and another band's like, I'm going to do it that way too. That's where you get genres. That's where you got yacht rock. You had the same session players on all these albums, and they've got a way of playing. And somebody says, "Oh, don't, don't, yeah, we're going to start every song like that." Whether it's Hall and Oates, it's Kenny Loggins, you got the same session players, you got the same guy arranging the horns. All of a sudden, all that music sounds similar. When you had all those songwriters in California, like Linda Ronstadt, Warren Zevon, Randy, all the Eagles, like that all, as a documentary where Linda Ronstadt says, I'm a little worried that we're all become that all the music we make is going to converge into one band and one song because they were so influenced by
and
one
nobody
another.
wrote him better than John David Souther anyway. We all know that. The
That's
late
true.
great John David
That's true.
Souther. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So
the first episode of this podcast is about my favorite piece of recorded music, which is Moon Dreams, as on Miles Davis's album The Birth of the Cool, as arranged by the jazz arranger Gil Evans. Right, it just stops the clock for me. Okay, and I am just everything else disappears when I listen to that song, and so I've listened to it a million times. I
now
was
you're
at
gonna make
a
me go listen to it again. Say it again for anybody in the car.
Moon
Moon
Dreams
Dreams. Okay.
on Miles Davis's Birth of the Cool. So I was at a residency when I was writing that book, The Lines Between Us, right? Me and a bunch of really great authors that were giving me imposter syndrome. And we were working, whatever, 14 hours a day writing our books. But, we tried to take a little time to have some fun. I said one night, listen, everybody, we're going to meet in this room. I got a speaker. Everybody's going to play one song off their phone through the speaker that they love and just tell us why you love it. Right. And I got up there
Ooh,
and I was like,
man, I'm
Moon,
gonna have to. You. Woo, give me homework,
do it
man.
sometime. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
know
Like,
Dave Sheinin? Do you know Sheinin?
uh-uh.
Sheinen's a dear friend. Sheinin covered the Orioles. He's a long 35-year Washington Post sports writer. He's covered
Uh-huh.
a dozen Olympics, and he's one of my favorite, but a musician
Okay.
and lives in Butchers Hill, does his own music. Like, look, Sheinin. He's on my show all the time. We had a weird disagreement about this topic two
Oh,
years ago. So
what was
finish
it?
your thing.
Okay. All right, we'll
Well,
come back. Well, go
what,
ahead.
yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. But go ahead.
All right. So we do this. We talk about our favorite songs. I'm saying like, listen, like the horn player climbs all the way up to this note, and the other instruments follow him all the way up, like they found some buried treasure. And I'm like just being ahead and freaking out about this song. And then after this, my book's over. I'm looking for something to do, and like, well, like the sound of a song has like like if I love a song, the song draws me to the writer and the meaning they were conveying. And then I realized it was the sound of the song that drew me to the song in the first place. It was the sound. And so how do you create meaning for people just with the sound? Why do I love this Gil Evans song so much? And then I realized this is a Johnny Mercer song. And one of the greatest American songwriters of all time. And Johnny Mercer started Capitol Records, and the first session he did for Capitol Records, he had this singer named Martha Tilton sing Moon Dreams. It was very sweet and sappy and poppy. Glenn Miller with the Army Air Force Band and Johnny Desmond and the Crew Chiefs, they did Moon Dreams. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, let me listen. I love this song so much. Let me listen to the original kind of recordings. And they just fell flat for me, partly because of my age, right? Like swing music from the 40s, that's what my grandparents listened to, and I was never interested in. I wanted to rock, right? And so
Well, you were 18 when? You were 18 in
1993.
1993?
Yeah.
So you're HFS guy?
Yeah, I saw the 92 HF Festival at the
Yeah, okay.
PGA
So I
Equestrian
mean,
Center.
I can call it like that because like I was told by my bosses at the Baltimore Sun, my sports editor bosses, Mike Marlowe specifically, who loved the Beatles, and loved, all of that Dave Clark Five, that era of music. He always said to me when I was 18 years old and he was my boss in 1986, he said, the music you listen to now will be the music you love the rest of your life. And it's 40 years later, and I'm sitting here and we go to lunch and he laughs at me because he still loves the Beatles and I still love Led Zeppelin.
Yeah,
But I want to give it, but Lawrence Lanahan's here, and it's not a book, it is a podcast. I just think of you as an author. Is that okay?
that's great.
People
That's
think of me
very
as all
flattering.
sorts of things. Usually it begins with an A or an F. And so I have the Dave Sheinin story, and I want to give it to you
Yeah.
as a legitimate misunderstanding. Okay. Like it's completely legitimate. And by the way, Hank Azaria is coming on this week. We're going to talk about Springsteen and his love of spring. So it's a big music week here. I have
That's
Hank
great.
Azaria on. I have John Palumbo coming on. Rick Emmett from Triumph is coming on next month. I am begging Getty Lee to come on and talk baseball with me at some point. I'm even going to Toronto to stalk him. Don't tell him. Might stay. Who knows? A little while. It's a
Mum's
weekend
the
or two.
word.
So on June 27th of 2021, and don't ask me why, because we're in the middle of the plague. Second summer of the plague. Nobody could go out. It's summertime, right? I put up for my music fans, what is the best song ever written and why?
Oh,
And it came to me, and I don't know why I put it up, but pretty early on, someone answered Triumph Magic Power always gets me going. And I'm like, hmm. So I listened to it. I'm like, that's a really good song. And I sort of rediscovered Triumph in a different way and their music. And I invited Rick Emmett on. He wrote a book last year. He's coming back on. I'm going to try to get him out to an Oriole game because he loves baseball. So that begat that. But on
yeah.
that thread, I'll never forget this. It was 4 in the morning. I'm about to take a shower in my peaceful time. I think my wife might have been away, cranking music up. And I literally put this thread up the day before and I made I have an old iPod. I'm old
Yeah.
school. So
Oh,
I,
good.
I I have most songs. I mean, I'm a dude. I was a music critic. I had 20,000 CDs. I was a DJ before Apple Music and all that. I'm
Yeah.
weird. So I had my iPod in my bathroom and my like setting in, and I looked down, and Dave Sheinin wrote on that. And Dave's a musician and a guy I respect. He he wrote one word, and it was the Fleetwood Mac song. I thought he wrote Sarah. He just wrote the word Sarah, and I'm like, I love that song. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, they probably were kind of madly in love at that time when they wrote that. It's kind of gypsy-ish. And I remember, wait a minute, baby, stay with me a while. So I listened to it, cranked it up, and I showered that morning, and I'm like, man, Shining's a friggin' genius. I'm getting the great. So I want to read you some of these songs. Can I do that for you
Yeah,
here?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
these are
yeah.
the songs I got that morning. Taxi by Harry Chapin. Born to Run. Whiter Shade of Pale. John Lennon said it was the greatest song ever written. Tie Between Yesterday and God Only Knows. God Only Knows, really good
The
one, right?
Beach Boys.
Yeah, Stairway to
Yeah, we talk
Heaven.
about Pet Sounds on the because the arranging on that album is
Everyone
insane.
loves Pet Sounds, right? Timeless. American Pie, God Only Knows, Man in a Box, Alice in Chains, Like a Stone by Audio Slave. Just, I'm getting all, Welcome to the Jungle, Hey Jude, We Are the World, A Day in the Life, I got a lot of God Only Knows, man.
I
I mean,
bet you did.
I got a
Did you
lot
get
of
any?
stare.
Did you get any Caroline? No.
I don't know. I got Stairway to Heaven. I'm just watching the wheels, John Lennon. Star
Oh,
Spangled Banner, Amazing Grace. I'll hear that. That's the guy that told me to go F myself on Facebook a couple of weeks ago.
that's not graceful.
Imagine With or Without You, you two. Imagine Limp Bizkit, Nookie. There's a good one for you. Elvis in the Ghetto. For those about the rock, the center field. Baseball song, center field,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. John Fogerty.
Blackbird, no, Revolution. Oh my God! I mean,
There's a
half of these
lot
are
of
Beatles
Beatles.
songs, right? So, Ray Bachman was the one that gave me Magic Power, and that was before he had cancer. Love you, Ray. So Ray's doing okay. Ray's
Oh,
the
good.
one that gave me Magic Power. I didn't even realize that. So it turns out I discover not only that, and this is when Christine McVie's still alive. So I'm listening to some Fleetwood Mac, and it's getting me
Love
going.
her.
All these songs, Layla, the late great Batman of Ocean City, Mike Beatty, who's still alive, said Layla because he loved the passion with which it was written for. It was a love breakup song with Eric Clapton and involved another Beatle. There you go, involved George Harrison.
It did,
Layla's love, right?
and they snatched up a song that somebody was playing in the studio to pitch on the end. And here's a Fleetwood Mac little piece of trivia. My band covers Blue Letter from the Fleetwood Mac self-titled album. That's another song where like they were at a studio and these two guys were writing a song in the next studio over, and they were like, "Whoa!" And so they were. That's not a Fleetwood Mac song.
Well,
It
this the
sounds
whole
just
Tusk
like
thing
them.
was
So
like a whole
maybe,
big band.
oh
Yeah.
boy, yeah. But so is that their song? It sounds just like them. So with the Gil Evans song, the Moon Dreams, I go and listen to these kind of swing versions of it, and I'm like, oh, they're just selling records. That's what pop sounded like in the 40s. Gil Evans is transcendent. It turns out that Johnny Mercer's cousin is the one who signed Gil Evans to make Moon Dreams. It turns out that Capitol Records that put out Martha Tilton, put out Gil Evans. So the whole art commerce thing is not as dichotomous as you think it is. And so I started listening to Gil Evans' Moon Dreams, Martha Tilton and Johnny Mercer's Moon Dreams, Glenn Miller and the Army Air Force Band's Moon Dreams. And they start informing each other in my head, right? There's not three versions of a song anymore. There is a song or a song world or a center of gravity. And I realized that what a song is a place that you go. Like whoever writes the song, they create the center of gravity. But there's this huge orbit of like all these different notions they were exploring in the lyrics, melodic themes, this and that. And a great arranger can go to the orbit of the song and take some of that and go away and create something that's truly original, even though it's derivative. So Johnny Mercer is one of the best songwriters in the history of Earth. Accentuate the positive, Moon River. I mean, just amazing stuff. So how is it that somebody like Gil Evans can take something he wrote and create a version of it that would include things that the songwriter himself, Johnny Mercer, wouldn't even recognize, wouldn't have even thought to do? So what is a song even? And so that there's 5 episodes. It's 3.5 hours in total, and it's really about like what is a song, what is creativity, what is originality through the lens of what is possible when we start with an existing piece of music and create something of our own. And so I ended up going back all the way to the 1830s in Germany when suddenly people had pianos in their houses. Suddenly you could publish compositions on paper, and mass produce them. And people started pirating music. You think that was a Napster thing. In the 1830s in Germany, these, bad boy printers, publishing houses would just print some composer's music and sell it. And the composer would get nothing. So these composers are like, hands off our compositions. And so the publishers got together, like, we got to stop this. We're going to fine each other if we ever do this. Like 50 gold coins. One, melody is property, 50 gold coins if you reprint one of our things. And then they were like, well, wait, what if somebody rearranges it? What if you take an aria from an opera and use that to create just a solo piano piece, based off of that? So they commissioned a music journal in 1832 to write this long Talmudic article about what constitutes a creative arrangement versus what's just a reprint, what's just piracy. And they have like little snatches of sheet music, like this is original, this is not. And so that's 1832. 180 years later, hip hop comes along and people start sampling. And sampling is literally arranging. You are taking a chunk of music out of one song and moving it around in
Oh,
another
I
song.
remember when Vanilla Ice said that he didn't steal under pressure. He's like, mine went ding, 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 versus ding, 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 ding. Like
Yeah,
literally, right? I mean,
right.
and Led Zeppelin's fought this with Stairway to Heaven, like literally, right? All
Well,
of these songs that get under dispute to some
yeah,
way,
yeah, but it's all
right?
down
In
to
the
like
modern
what,
era.
right, but what's original? So, Public Enemy would have like dozens of samples in one song. They would use samples like an orchestra. They put so many together that it creates a new sound. And so, when people thought hip hop was a fad, like nobody sued over it. Oh, it's a fad, it'll go away. Once they realize there's money to be made in it, then people start suing over it. So, the Turtles, Happy Together, they get sampled by De La Soul, and the guy from the Turtles is like, sampling is theft. Anybody that has a creative bone in their body, that sampling is not creative. And it's like the Turtles, Happy Together, the chord progression for that song, dun, 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 dun. It's the Andalusian cadence. Basically, it's descending chords, and the last chord you think is going to be a minor chord, and they switch it to a major. WNYC's classical music show called it the most used musical progression of all time. And it's like, you guys are arguing about originality and whether sampling is original, and you just used the Andalusian cadence for the 5 millionth time, and you're making a pop song with bop bop bop. Like you're not as original as you think you are. But then Gilbert O'Sullivan, who did that song Alone Again Naturally, he sues Biz Markie and wins, and the judge cites the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not steal, and it knocked sampling out of hip hop, unless you had a lot of money and could license everything, because that's stealing. Um, but Gilbert O'Sullivan stole his name from Gilbert and Sullivan, who did the Mikado, which stole from Japanese culture. So like now you've got the Marvin Gaye's family suing Robin Thicke over Blurred Lines, suing Ed Sheeran
Right.
over, that sounds too much like Get It On. It's like, well, what can you sue over in music? What constitutes originality? And for the longest time, it's like you can only sue over melody. right? That is what's property. But now they're suing over like the vibe, like, oh, that kind of sounds like Marvin Gaye. And so we've got all these disputes about when you use, 'cause all music uses notions we've all explored. All music uses musical tools that we all have access to. So what is it that constitutes originality? You know, like with jazz, bebop, you know, Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, all that stuff. The reason bebop exists is because of copyright law. If you wanted to, as a jazz band, cover "I Got Rhythm" by George Gershwin, and you just play the melody and everybody improvises, you play the melody again, you had to license it. It was a cover, right? But what the jazz guys did said, all right, I'm going to write a new melody. We're going to use the exact same chord changes.
Right. Just change the bridges,
So,
right?
so
Move it
like
around. Yeah.
like Ornithology by Charlie Parker is the same chords as How High the Moon, but he didn't want to license How High the Moon, so he writes a new melody and he's soloing over the same chord changes, and it's called a contrafact. There's a name for it. So you've got this genre, this sound that comes out of arranging around the copyright law, and it changes jazz. Jazz was dance music. Now it's like this intellectual thing with bebop where you sit down and you listen to it, and it's all because, well, we like this song, but we can't play it exactly like that. So, you know, you could steal the harmony, you just couldn't steal the melody. Now that people are getting sued over everything. You know that the reggaeton beat, boom, 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 boom. These two guys in 1989 had a hit with that beat. They're suing Daddy Yankee. They're suing Luis Fonsi. They're suing everybody because they know they'll get some money. But it's because reggaeton uses the same beat. But it's like, man, that beat's been around God knows how long. You can probably find it in Latin music 100 years ago.
Well,
So
once we start recording music, right? It's not live anymore, and live I can get up and play cover songs and do whatever you do. Lawrence Lanahan's here. He is an author by trade. I've screwed up 3 times and called him a book guy. This is a podcast thing. You should write a book on music. By the way, on the Sarah thing, just so you know, Dave Sheinin wrote Sara, I think, is what
was
he.
it Hall and Oates?
That's Sarah Smile. Hang on. Worse
Okay.
than that, I had Chad Wiesling out, who is the NFL agent for Josh Jacobs. He's a local, but he's a heavy metal, rock and roll, Guns N' Roses, F&A, Priest, Maiden kind of
Yeah.
loves
Yeah. Yeah.
loves that music, right?
Shredder.
He's a shredder, right? So we're on the set, and like I'm about to kiss Shinin's ass and say, dude, you got me listening to Fleetwood Mac and Sarah, and I went through the whole thing. I just went through with you with all these Beatles songs and different songs that are great songs and songwriters, composers, and songs that I love. And I said to him, where did you pick the Fleetwood Mac song? And he's like, no, 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 no. Sarah by Dylan, Bob Dylan. The Sarah. So he
Oh,
meant
off a
Bob Dylan, and
desire.
then Chad says, no, no, no. I thought you meant like the Jefferson Starship song, Sarah, like Mickey Thomas and Grace Slick, and I'm like, man, I just complete. And for 6 months I waited to have Shining on, and I was going to kiss his ass about this Fleetwood Mac song, and he didn't even meet Fleetwood Mac. He meant Bob Dylan.
And you went down the rabbit hole in the Fleetwood Mac song. Everybody wins.
And you went down Hall and Oates. So how
I
about
did.
that?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's
Yep.
another Sarah out there that I don't know about, some country song or something like that. But I mean, that is I love music, and I think sports is such an argument about winning and losing and tribal and this and that. And you can have your thing like me where I really never liked Jethro Tull or the Grateful Dead. I can't make excuses for country or rap or like stuff that I don't like. I'm a pop rock nerd, although I move in all sorts of different directions for music. But music is this one incredibly universal thing that like it never has a bad day, never has a
Yeah.
losing day.
No,
And
it
if you're
doesn't.
feeling down, you can pick it up. If you're feeling up and you want to be down, you want to feel melancholy after the third drink and cry your eyes out, you can get some blues you can use.
Oh yeah.
Like it's there for you all the time. And at 56, I say this, and I'm not kissing your ass about I would have had you on either way if I didn't love music as much as I do. But like music is my thing now. Like I don't get off on sports in the way. I've never been a gambling guy. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll all still work. They're all really good things, some in moderation. But the music thing for me, dude, it's my go-to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's my thing. And as my bands are drying up and bands are dying off and the Stones are getting old, like whatever, I don't know that concerts are going to be my thing. But I had
Right.
a great Talking Heads experience that I'm going to tell you about when you
Yeah.
tell me
Yeah.
more about the podcast. Is five pieces, 3.5 hours, and is a lot of this more like your range of weirdly Tchaikovsky, Beethoven-y, or is it more modern in
It
your
is
mindset?
everything. It is
Okay.
everything. because it's about how we listen and like why it all means so much to us, but about why the sound does that to us rather than the lyrics or the lives of the musicians or anything like that. So I'll just walk through real quick. The first episode is about my favorite piece of recorded music, Moon Dreams, and because Gil Evans did so much with somebody else's song. Well, what is a song? I also talked to Gil Evans' biographer, Larry Hickok, and about like, well, what about his life made him arrange music the way he did? And there's a lot of interesting stuff there. The second episode is about how arranging got such a bad rap. Starting 200 years ago, oh, it's derivative. People are just, they're stealing from other people. And, I talked to the 90-year-old guy who wrote a three-part biography of the composer Franz Liszt. Franz Liszt took all nine Beethoven symphonies and rearranged them for solo piano. Imagine 80 musicians playing some of the greatest art humans have ever made, distilling it down so one person can play it with two hands. And so I also talked to a pianist who's played all nine.
And
Uh,
music wasn't recorded then; it was written
no,
on paper,
but
right?
what Liszt did was basically the equivalent of a phonograph. You are a poor person out in the country in Europe, you're never going to see a symphony play Beethoven. But if somebody can come out there with Liszt's transcriptions for solo piano, you can hear it. So it was a way of democratizing Beethoven's music. And so the second episode is just about, how how much originality is possible in derivative music. The third episode is so much fun. There's this woman, Susan Schmidt Horning. She's a historian at St. John's College. She wrote a book that's a history of the recording studio from Edison to the LP. So I talked to her about how, the sound of popular music changes over time, right? And so much of that has just to do with recording technology. You were recording into a giant acoustic horn and you had to stand 20 feet back so your trumpet solo didn't destroy the equipment.
I
Then
always
you
saw that like in the Three Stooges and Little Rascals, like back in the
Yeah,
20s and
yeah,
30s.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's etching the song. Then you get microphones, you get Bessie Smith, and she's singing into the microphone. Then you get better microphones. And what happens is you get Bing Crosby, Rudy Valley, they can get real close to the mic and they can sing very delicately and languidly. And that brings in the crooners. That brings a whole new, Rudy Valley suddenly is getting 10,000 letters a week because people are so in love with him because this quiet voice is in
Well, the
people's
radio
living
also
rooms.
brought that to life, right?
Yes, the radio, absolutely. And so the microphone changed the sound of music. And then multi-track editing, that's why, Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys was done in a bunch of different studios over the course of 6 months with all these different musicians. That was it used to be the studio captured a performance, and then the studio became sort of a sonic laboratory. And the studio itself becomes part of the arranging. Then you get hip hop. Now everybody's got enough tools on their phone to write and arrange their own music. So the sound of the popular song changes with recording technology. Fourth episode is about copyright lawsuits, how copyright lawsuits shape the sound of music because people are always fighting from 1820s Germany to Ed Sheeran and Marvin Gaye's family, fighting over what's really original, whether you can sample, whether you can capture somebody's vibe and put it in your own song. And then I get into AI generated music because there's a lot of formulaic music, and AI is just a formula. It's just all formula. So I kind of relate like arranging and these sort of conventions and trends and stuff we do to what the music that's going to be coming down the pike. The fifth episode is super personal. I think about all four episodes, and it's like, well, what is it that I love about arranging? What is a song? And I talk about what I think a song is, but also I realize my favorite arrangements, arrangers, like the ba 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 na na in New York, New York. That's an arranger, Don Costa, right? Arrangers add stuff to songs. And I realized that the songs I love, the arrangers sort of take things away and make space. Public Enemy would do all their sampling and scratches and drum machines and everything live in the studio, and they would mix by muting certain things at certain points. So they made all the sound, and the mixing would take things away. Wilco did Yankee Hotel Foxtrot the same way. They added so much, and then kind of like a sculpture, took parts away until the song was the right shape. And like Beck did an album. We'll call it an album, but in 2012, Beck did a release of music called Song Reader. It was 20 pieces of sheet music for songs he'd written. If you wanted to hear his songs, you had to sing them yourself. So I realized that what great arrangers do is they clear a space for you. If a song's a place you go to, the great arrangers won't just add and add and add. They'll clear out some space for you to come in and be a part of the song. And I talk about a song by a songwriter named David Berman, that does that, and then the lyrics of the song are about making space for you in his own song. It's kind of a trompe l'oeil, like a trick that he does to bring you into the song. So it's deeply researched, like my book, but it's also deeply personal. I play a lot of music in the background, and for me, it was just like, what happens if I just listen to music, my favorite songs, through the lens of their arrangements for a few years, and this is what I came away with, and the kind of vibe I'm going for is you're a music guy. You ever have a really great hang with a good buddy, and all of a sudden you look up, it's 3 in the morning. There's album covers all over the floor, among other things, and so like that. That's what I'm going for. Like you and me talking today, just like, man, let's listen a little closer and let's listen this way and realize, God, listening to music is just the best thing in the world. And it's not just, we all love songwriters and all this attention goes on songwriters. And, I love Bob Dylan, I love Townes Van Zandt, I love Joni Mitchell, I love good songwriters, but that's not all that's going on. There is a sound that draws you in the first place. One last story is that made me get into this is when my oldest son was in first grade. It was 2019. Remember Lil Nas X, the cowboy song,
Sure.
whatever it was. What was it called? Old Town Road was inescapable in 2019. And my kids would be like, "Play Old Town Road on the way to
Like
school."
Achy Breaky Heart was when you were in high school,
Yes, and Billy Ray Cyrus did
right?
eventually join Lil Nas X for that song, and so the kids are like, "Let's play Old Town Road." So I would just put it on Spotify and drive to school. And I realized one day I'd go to school, come back, I'd be like, "This is this song 10 minutes long? Like it's still going after 10 minutes? What? Like how? Whatever. I don't understand the 21st century. Maybe a 10 minute song can be a hit." And then I was like, "Wait a minute." I look. I'm like, "Where is this song on Spotify?" I can't find it because there's 18 different versions. There's BTS with Lil Nas X. There's Billy Ray Cyrus with Lil Nas X. So for one, what is the actual song? Two, why is it 10 minutes long? It's not. The beginning of that song is a little plunky banjo, right? Which is a sample from Nine Inch Nails. It's not bluegrass music. It's a little plunky banjo, and then he does the song, and the end of the song is plunky banjo. The arrangement at the beginning and the end of the song are the same, and Spotify was looping it. I didn't realize that. So it's a minute and a half song, but I thought it was 10 minutes because of the arrangement. And it just made me realize like, one, the song never begins or ends. Two, there's all these different versions of it. It's just this thing in the culture that we're all projecting things onto. Like, is it a white song? Is it a black song? Is it hip hop? Is it country?
Look,
And
Rapper's Delight came in 2 minutes or it came in two sides on Sugar Hill, right? Like literally that music. And every time Zeppelin and those band, Jimmy Page talked about making an hour-long piece of art, right? That they weren't trying to just make something that was 2 minutes long. I mean, the industry's been fighting that forever, right?
yeah,
Like it's got to be under 3 minutes, right? It's Beatles song, Elvis. It's got to be under 3 minutes. Don't bore us. Get to the chorus.
yeah, and that's a function of the technology, right? You had that's how
It was
much
only that
time you had.
big, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Once you start making, and we talk about LPs, and magnetic tape to record on, the way we got that was these guys were doing communications research during World War II and trying to figure out what the Germans were doing with communication technology. This lieutenant is like, it's 3 in the morning, he's doing his research, and there's some Beethoven symphony on German radio. And he's like, re recordings can only capture a few minutes. Are they broadcasting a Beethoven symphony live at 3 in the morning? Nobody's playing Beethoven live at 3 in the morning. What the hell is this? And after the war, he goes to Radio Frankfurt and discovers that the Germans have invented magnetic tape to record on. So he takes a couple of these, they're called magnetophones. He takes a couple back to California,
So it could make
start
the radio play all night,
yeah, or you could
basically,
play like
right?
long pieces of music. And so he takes it back to California. And there's a company called Ampex, which makes radar gear for the war, but the war's over, so they need a new gig. So Ampex gets involved, and an audiophile named Bing Crosby gets involved, and Ampex starts making the tapes. This guy starts making the magnetic tape recording technology, and like so, World
An
War
industry was
II,
born, literally.
like everything we
Several
use,
industries,
the
actually.
technology came out of war. Yeah, yeah. So, and that has to do with the way that music sounds over the next 10 years. So it was fascinating to go into do the research and like, well, what's going on in the culture, what's going on in the economy, what's going on to make these songs sound the way that they do. And yeah, it goes from Franz Liszt in the 1830s up to brand new stuff like Ed Sheeran, there's hip hop, there's country. Like I talk about Countrypolitan. Billy Sherrill was the arranger and all those when country got really sweet with a lot of strings in the 70s, like he stopped loving her today. Those strings, that's Billy Sherrill. That's a guy that developed a really popular arranging style called Countrypolitan that sweetened things up with strings. And that's arranging. It's just it's at every style of popular music, somebody's at it with the sound. And once you start listening to it that way, it's hard to stop.
All right, Lawrence Lanahan is here. We'll probably go all night with this music. His podcast is out everywhere. It's called Rearranged, one word, Rearranged. Premieres this week, and it releases weekly as a 5-part audio documentary, and I'm sure the book will follow it. So you work on any books, or are you done writing? What are you done?
That the book was just so exhausting. So for a couple years there, I just couldn't even think about it. Um,
By the way, the
maybe
book is the lines between us. You got to promote your book, Lawrence. Come on,
Oh,
man.
thanks. I'm so bad at that. Yeah, the lines between us, two families and a quest across Baltimore's racial divide. But possibly there's a book in this. Like, I think it would be cool to write a listener's memoir, like a memoir of a music listener. And maybe it's got this lens, maybe it doesn't. But if people enjoy the podcast, podcasts, you never know. It's digital. It's a collection of bytes among trillions and trillions of gigabytes on the internet that it must compete with. It may just sync. I appreciate you having me on. I know a few people will listen now, and it means a lot to me that you have me on because people will hear it. If people like it, if people like the way that I listen and talk about how I listen, I might write a listener's memoir, or write some more about arranging. But ever since when I was in seventh grade, man, I had a split end mullet out to here and Led Zeppelin t-shirt with the sleeves ripped off, and my mom had a ukulele in the
So right
house.
across the front.
Yeah,
I know.
and
Yeah.
and I loved Kashmir, and I grabbed my mom's ukulele off the shelf and tried to get that da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na-na. And ever since then, they got me a cheap guitar for Christmas that year, and music's just been a huge part of my life ever since. So if I can write a book about it, somebody wants to give me money to write a book about it, I will happily sit here and crank that. Oh
So
my
here are
Lord.
the crazy things that this is the Led Zeppelin Pacifica belt. This is the original Zeppelin belt that I got at East Point Mall at KB Toy. It's
That's
the
in
only
good
belt I
condition.
ever had, and my wife got me a Rush belt like 10 years ago, and I didn't even have a belt to put it on or this on, right? And then she bought me a belt and got me a Rush, but it wasn't original. It was a repress with the band made it in the modern era, sold it on the website or whatever for a little while. It's really
Yeah.
hard to get to, but they're all kind of hard to get. These are from the 70s. So if you look on the back of it, this is 1977. It says right on in Pacifica,
Oh
California. So
wow.
so I have these belts, and I love them, and they're kind of the fun little baseball card thing that I do because I can wear them. So
Hmm.
everybody, like when I go out, people are like, "What belt are you wearing tonight?" And it's from a music perspective, and I listen to songs all the time. And when this segment's over, I have a couple of hours of downtime before Hank Azaria comes on, and I will inevitably press play downstairs.
Put on
And it,
Highway Patrolman by Bruce Springsteen for his area.
You know what, man? He was doing a cover of Glory Days earlier. I want to go deeper into the depths of my Springsteendom with him. And Nils Lofgren's been on for hours with me talking
That's
music
awesome. Yeah.
because Nils is a friend of mine and a music guy and like all that. But music to me, not just the escape and the place, it's where I'm going to go the rest of my life. And I hope that I never lose my hearing in that way or even my vision. But like concerts and music, I'm going to leave you with this story because you're a music guy. And if anybody doesn't know who the hell I am and they've made it 45 minutes into this, this is my gift to you because I gave this to a guy last week as well because I sent him to the Zeppelin documentary and he loved it. It was great. I don't go to movies much and I love rock docs. I want to see the yacht rock documentary,
It's wonderful.
but I don't have HBO, but I want to see it. So the Talking Heads thing came out last year and they re-released Stop Making Sense. It was the 40th anniversary of the shows at the
Yeah.
Pantages and everybody remembers the big suit and burning down the house, right? I didn't love the Talking Heads then. I liked them. They were fine. But I was more Poison, Styx
Yeah.
Rush,
Yeah.
Zeppelin, like into that in the 80s. And since then, the Talking Heads have become this ubiquitous, stay up late, all the songs that are the hits, the dozen songs, not to mention the Tom Tom Club and the Offshoot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have never seen the movie. The movie came out summer, it was last summer. It was
Yeah. I
last
remember. Yeah.
August.
They actually
So
all got together in the same room.
and it was incredibly awkward and uncomfortable, just as you expect it to be. I had interviewed in my day, I interviewed David Byrne, who's a Baltimore guy. He did
Yep.
an album, met him, played the lyric. I interviewed Jerry Harrison at one point, and I interviewed Tina and Chris when they did a top. Like, I have interviewed all four of them separately. I have all the interviews, and I've been putting these out on my social and doing all
Yeah,
that.
cool.
But the Talking Heads are not even in my top 50 of my favorite, but I love them, but they're not in, they're just, I have a
Yeah.
lot of music in my life, right? But my wife saw it, the Colbert thing, and I'm like, I've never seen that movie. And then I saw that it was in D Box, DBOX. Never heard of it. Still, when I tell people, they're like, what the hell is it?
I don't know
It's
what D-Box is.
okay. So Google it. This is your gift. Okay. Because I
Uh,
think this is where music's
it
going
sounds
more.
like something I wouldn't want to Google, but go ahead.
No, no, no. This has nothing to do with Justin Tucker. Um,
Ooh.
No, anything like that. I do comedy here too. That's what I'm going to do after I write my first song with you, which I'm going to do comedy before I do songwriting. Believe me, if I have to make one or the other to make a living, I'll write comedy. Way better than I can write hooks. So the Talking Heads thing happens, and that week I went online to, as we kids do, and we're going to click on our seat and all that, and I see this D box thing, and I'm like, what is it? It's a motion activated motion picture seat that you pay an extra $5 in, but the seat moves with the film. And I
Okay.
remember my wife was going to do this with Top Gun, the new one, and
Yeah,
she
yeah.
didn't because she was afraid she's going to get motion sickness. She got sick on the Super Duper Looper Hershey Park a couple years ago, and she's
Yeah,
a little
that'll do
weirded
it.
out. So she didn't do it. She went to the movie. She came home, and we didn't talk about Top Gun because I never go to the movies. I went to see the Talking Heads movie on my own, all by myself. I booked one little seat in the middle of the theater, and I drove down on a Friday morning. It was only at Arundel Mills in D Box. It's on
Okay.
IMAX. So they restored the movie. They did all this stuff, but here's where the technology comes in, and this is where your theory of music and song and even the things you were talking about with New Orleans of clearing the dance floor and AI and where we're going with this.
Yeah.
I think of every great movie from the band through the Stones and through the song remains the same. All the U2 and Rattle and Hum. Pick any concert movie you want. The Taylor Swift's latest concert from last year, whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
Eras Tour, and taking that visual and do what the Stones at the Max did, make it huge, make it,
Yeah.
visual. Do what my dear late great friend David Modell did with the 4D and the U2 movie, where Adam Clayton takes his bass and it feels like it's going to chop your head off, and you duck. You duck on
Yeah.
stage because Bono's singing to you and making you back up. But this is 3D, right? I had 3D glasses for that, and that was God almost 20 years ago now that they went down to South America and shot that U2 film in that way. This movie had been redone. Was it Jonathan Demme? I think
Yeah,
was
it's
famous
Demi.
that did Fatal Attraction, did movies and stuff like that, right? Shot that as an art piece in 1984 on film in big, and they did 2 nights and they redid it. But here's what they did. They did the music and the seat. The seat
Okay.
it has 200,000 haptic movements in it, including a kick drum in the back and things on the
Right.
side, and it moves and it moves. It's a little bit like, have you been to Epcot and done soaring?
No.
In Epcot, there's this ride you get in that you suspend and you go around the world. And the sense when you're going through Africa, you could smell the lemongrass and the dust hits you. And when you go
Yeah.
over the water, you smell the salt water. And
Yeah.
it's like all of these experiential things
Yeah.
that I'm sure
Like
AI,
John Waters doing Smellorama.
once they figure out porn this way, it's going to be over for civilization, quite frankly, right?
What
But
civilization? Sorry.
what's left of it, right? But the glasses, where you can immerse and all of the, what's that called? When you put the glasses on and you
Oh, the
not, it's not
virtual reality.
virtual reality, right? VR, right? Okay. So this thing was like that, but I'm in this movie theater, and you are familiar with Stop Making Sense, the movie?
Oh, I've seen it a few times. Yeah,
Okay,
I love it.
I had never seen it. I had never seen it. So the fact that you come out into the seat and Byrne drops the boombox
Yeah.
and and so the seat starts to go with it's made. The movie was made for the seat,
Yeah.
and you know how it's shot where David Byrne's coming at you. And we're on the road to nowhere,
Yeah.
and then it starts to move, and you start to dance, and the music has this thing about it that takes you on a journey. It takes you to a place. And
Yeah.
I'm in that seat and I started giggling like a 12-year-old girl. And, like I started just giggling and I'm in the theater completely alone. No one signed up for this at all.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm on my phone now into the second song. They haven't even brought the stage out yet. Chris Franz hadn't hit a kick that hit me in the back. And I'm giggling and I'm texting every music nerd, every Max Weiss, they all got texts from me saying, you need to come and do this because this ain't like nothing I've ever done. It's a little like a Disney ride, but
Yeah.
made for the movie. And I started to think about music and the next thing when there is no more YouTube, that they could bring Elvis's 68 back to life and put you in a seat to go on a ride with him. Like
Right.
those
Right.
kinds of films, I just see it as something that's really going to be cool. And I'm shocked that Taylor Swift didn't shoot her movie last
Right.
year on that huge tour in that way. But I
Yeah.
keep thinking of all the experiential music that we've had that has some sort of, you mentioned 9 Inch, as you're mentioning things that are really movement oriented, to be able to be suspended in a chair that will take you there in a concert.
Right.
I think we're moving to another place where I'm going to enjoy music in a way that the first time somebody showed me an iPod, and I'm like,
Uh,
hold on. I have 20,000 CDs. I used to go to Jamaica on vacation with a bag just for my CDs, just so I would have the music I want on my
yeah.
vacation. And when that all happened, and now like we're at a point now where music's going to change. And I feel like I saw it in that crazy Talking Heads movie because I thought this is a 40-year-old movie brought back to life. And it was so awesome, dude, that I spent 23 bucks and went back 2 days later. And I took John Allen and I took Rasig. And to
Uh,
this day, they will still tell you, and nobody else is. I told my wife, I'm telling you, I'm telling my audience, I have never, and I love concerts. I heard people behind me, the way it was shot in the theater. You were in the theater in LA from the vantage point of the
right.
filmmaker, and you could hear the whispers of people talking around you, like, holy shit, I'm in the
Oh,
club. I
that's
was
like
in
that
the bar.
Dolby Atmos sound,
It was
maybe.
insane, dude. And I'm just telling you from a music standpoint, you start talking to me about the 20s and the 30s and getting on the recorded music. I'm starting to think about the glasses and where I can go with a U2 concert that I want to experience, or an Elvis or a Beatles or just anything in that world that's been made, including the
Yeah.
Zeppelin movie, where they went, dude, that Zeppelin movie, they went back to 68 and 69. Year I was born, before you
Uh,
were born.
yeah.
And the whole movie's just Zeppelin 1 and 2, and it's restored
Oh, wow.
incredible. I was blown away because they brought 6 or 7 songs back to life in a
Yeah.
way. Then there were songs you've heard a million times. To your point, not Dazed and Confused. The first album, Good Times, Bad Times. But the first song Zeppelin ever did, and this gets back to an hour ago when we started, when they got together and jammed as the Yardbirds, and they were trying to figure
Yeah.
out who's
The
this
New
Robert Plant guy,
Yardbirds. Yeah.
and John Paul Jones was a studio guy, never played a
Yeah.
sour note. They played Train Kept the Rolling.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the
I
first
believe
song
it.
they ever played. And you talk about Aerosmith's the first time I ever heard it. I
Right.
to this day
Well,
I don't know the
is that a
original version.
Yardbirds tune? Or is that a traditional that Yardbirds did? I don't
Well, I mean, they kind of went through it,
know.
and and it's been covered a million times and
Yeah.
by a million bands, but you experience it and feel it a different way. To your point, you mentioned Nothing Compares to You.
Yeah.
Everybody, the first time they heard it probably was Sinead O'Connor, but then everybody went back and got the Prince version. And
Yeah.
I think about that when I think of any song that's been covered. I go through a
Yeah.
million songs, that there are two ways to do it. Tracy Chapman's thing last year being an incredible example of rediscovering a
Yeah,
song.
yeah, yeah. It's a gift, that people create these things. But even Dylan, I quote him. He says, he said, if you'd played John Henry 1,000 times like I had, you'd have written How Many Roads Must a Man Walk Down To? I
That
just opened a different door in a different way. They're not, I say this as a songwriter, they're not all ours. Like I have a friend that covered my song and he found a way to do it that was better than mine. It's his song to me. Now, the whole the movie theater stuff, I'm of two minds about it because, and I'm guilty of it too. Music, our experience of music is so mediated, and this goes back to me saying, recording studios used to capture a good performance, and now they're the laboratory. Um, I want to make sure that my kids and their kids have the kind of pure experience of hearing and experiencing a musical performance right in front of them and realizing that's the core of it. Because there's this place out in Vegas called the Sphere. It's got music coming from every direction. Your seat buzzes, and that it's nothing new. People took acid took, still take. People have been taking acid to
I
mediate
was
their
not on
experience in music.
acid, but I
I'm
did
not
drink a
saying you
lot of
were.
beer that night that I went to the Sphere. So
But we all meet my podcast super media. It's me talking into a mic onto tape that gets distributed as digital bytes. Like I'm mediating music, and there's a million ways into it, and there's a million ways to get into the background of how it was made with like Rick Beato and all these people, and it's all awesome. Like as music nerds, we love this stuff and different ways to experience it. Um, I'm I'm a little scared of this century and its technology, but I just don't want us to lose sight of that primal connection that you and I know, like sitting up front and the band's playing or the
well, when the
symphony's playing.
performer's not singing and is lip syncing, it's just a whole different level of Dick
Right,
Clark that I
right.
can't roll with
So
anymore.
however far it goes this century, I want that to be there. Like I'm about to go down to Knoxville next month for the Big Ears Music Festival. It's a lot of experimental kind of boundary pushing kind of music. I don't know half the groups, and it's my tendency. Like you said, we listen to music. I totally I will always return to the music I loved when I was 17, Teenage Fan Club, all that kind of stuff. We do that, and I have to push myself. What's new? And I go to this festival and I make myself, instead of going to see the bands I know, I make myself go see the bands I don't. And some of it's irritating, but it's a
Well, the other
4 day
thing about
music.
modern music, if you love Teenage Fan Club and your kid likes that, you just put in Spotify and 15 bands that sound like that, and Hole will pop up, and all those bands of that era will just start
Right,
happening.
right,
And I think that's what makes these School of Rock kids go.
right.
Just in a general sense of it is derivative. I mean,
Yeah.
my God, Zeppelin's the most ripped off band ever, and anybody who knows anything about Zeppelin, including them,
They
would tell you they ripped off other
ripped off
people.
people too, yeah. But I am encouraged. So my best friend and I are turning 50 this month. We went to Austin for 3 nights to eat
Nice.
too much brisket and see too much music. And we played music together. We had an acoustic trio. We played all classic rock covers, back in high school in the early 90s. We played at like Overly Crabs and Beer. We played at the Emerald, and so we go way back playing and singing harmonies together and all. And so his kids are old enough that he's getting back into music, and he lives in Berlin, Maryland, and he's starting to play open mics and perform, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see him like doing this. And he's like, we should play an open mic in Austin, which like songwriter capital of the world, right? And I was like, okay. Um, we need guitars. So we got off the plane, went right to the pawn shop. We bought two cheap guitars, found an open mic, played that night, and there was some kid up there. He's probably 23, and he plays this incredible song he wrote. And he comes off stage, and we're talking, and he's talking about early REM, and he's talking about the Smiths. This kid who was born in the 21st century, probably. And he's so smart about it. And his name's Wyeth Miller, I think. Wyeth something, or if anybody wants to look him up. But it was just like, okay, good. Okay, good.
There's hope for us.
Yeah, like you're still coming at it the way we came at. Anyway, we sold our guitars back to the pawn shop and ended up basically renting guitars for Austin for $50, and it was a great time.
Hey, dude, everybody should love music as much as we love music. Lawrence Lanahan is here. I only know him as an author. I didn't know any of this music theory stuff. He's got a podcast called Rearrange. Everybody goes out and checks it out. And I will have this piece up at Baltimore Positive for everybody to check out as well if you're finding it on YouTube or whatever. Hey, thanks for coming on, man. I'll
Mister,
get
thank
everybody
you.
out to you. And the book is The Lines Between Us. He's also a great author and lives here locally. So if you
Oh,
see a guy who
can
looks
I,
like him,
because I'm bad at promoting, can I tell you one more thing? I have a band called Glad Pulses, and I just finished mixing the album, and it'll be out this spring.
so this is the typical douchebag music. What do you sound like? What's your band sound like? What are you derivative of? Are you a little bit like REM and a little bit like Wilco?
I mean, like, put it this way. The band went together to see Teenage Fan Club and Robin Hitchcock this year together down in DC. But it's kind of guitar pop. It's a little country. It's a little, there's three songwriters
It's
in
a
the band.
Jason Isbell kind of thing.
It's not quite.
I'm just
Ha
trying to
ha.
come up with
Hey,
something to pitch off.
Jason Isbell's a great. No, he's a great songwriter. Thank
Well,
you.
nobody
Yes,
wants to be compared to
we
anything,
sound exactly like Jason
I
Isbell.
want to
That's
be like
fine.
me at this point. Just be like you.
Our influences are on our sleeve. We're a bunch of dads that like good songwriters. And anyway, so it's got some cool arrangements, obviously. But that'll be out later this spring.
All right, Gil Evans' arrangement of Johnny Mercer's song "Moon Dream." So there's my
There you
homework.
go.
Miles Davis
Yep.
album "Birth of Cool." I know the Birth of Cool. All right, speaking of the Birth of Cool, we'll get cool after this. Plenty of sports ahead. Luke's around. Justin Tucker's still around, and the Ravens are around, and the Orioles are going to play baseball. And I'm going to Toronto to do it with Geddy Lee, whether he knows it or not. But we got a lot of music coming on this week, including the aforementioned John Palumbo. During this piece, John Allen actually texts me. He's back off the road with Stone Horses. So I got to grab him and bring him out for a crab cake sometime soon. And before I know it, Gina Shock and the Go-Go's are getting back together, and I will be partying with them out in Las Vegas as they put the band back together. So I got a good music here. I don't even know what's in front of me, whether I'm going to make the Dead show at the Sphere, whether I'm actually going to get to the Hollywood Bowl this year or not. I already turned down my chance to go to the Celebrity Theater this week and see Styx in the Round. So, but music is in my soul, and now
That's right.
it's a
That's
part
where
of
it is,
Baltimore
and that's
Positive.
where it
Well,
stays.
and it'll always be here as long as God, I hope I don't lose my
That's a
hearing.
good thing to remember. It's a good thing to remember.
Yeah.
Tell
All
tell
right.
John Palumbo thanks from me and my sisters. Thanks for
I'm
the
going to tell
music.
John Palumbo a lot of things, and I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be great. That's all I know. Back for more on Baltimore Positive. Stay with us, y'all.